Hello, today is Monday, February 12th. This is the 129th day since October 7th. There continues to be significant concern about the Israeli military launching a full-scale invasion on the southernmost city of Gaza called Rafah, where more than 1 million people are displaced, living in tent cities, continuing to suffer from lack of water, inadequate food, inadequate health services. There continues to be, a restriction on the number of trucks that are allowed into Gaza. It was reported today that 2 hostages were rescued in a special operation in Rafah City. In those reports, in addition to the 2 Israeli hostages being rescued by an Israeli operation, it's reported that dozens of Palestinians were also killed. That was in Rafah City. The army identified the rescued hostages as Fernando Simon Marman, 60, and Louise Har, 70, who said that they were kidnapped by Hamas militants from kibbutz Nir in the October 7th attacks. They were airlifted out of Gaza to Israel's Netanyahu's office, and they also hold Argentinian citizenship. It was reported over the weekend that Egypt has announced that the peace treaty between Egypt and Israel could be under threat if Israel continues and proceeds with a full-on ground invasion into Rafah. According to AP News, yesterday on Sunday, Egypt threatened to suspend the peace treaty if troops were sent into that densely populated area. It fears that fighting there could force a closure of the besieged territory's main supply route. So you recall that Rafah is the main checkpoint where humanitarian assistance is allowed into Gaza. So 2 Egyptian officials announced that, in addition to a Western diplomat yesterday. The threat to suspend the Camp David Accords, a cornerstone of regional stability for nearly half a century, came after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said sending troops to Rafah is a necessary requirement to win the 4-month war against Hamas. He's been pretty consistent the past several days in saying that Israel has every intention to continue into Rafah. Now, the Israeli government is saying that the Palestinians there will be moved and will be displaced, which has Egypt significantly concerned, because the concern is Palestinians will be displaced into Sinai, which is currently under Egyptian control. There's a peace treaty that specifically governs Sinai. And the concern is that if Palestinians are displaced, they will never be allowed to return. So that is what has been reported, that Egypt fears a mass influx of hundreds of thousands of Palestinian refugees who may never be allowed to return. Egypt, in addition to Jordan, are the 2 primary Middle Eastern countries that have the longest standing peace treaties with Israel. And today, King Abdullah is at the White House. He's meeting with President Biden. And so he will be here in Washington, D.C. In addition, there is a congressional update that's quite significant. The Senate had a vote yesterday about the Ukraine-Israel aid bill, and it cleared a critical hurdle yesterday. The bipartisan vote advanced measures to put it on track to be passed. Its fate in the House is still uncertain. It has stiff opposition from the GOP. It's opposed by Donald Trump, and so he is encouraging its opposition. The Senate yesterday moved it forward. It's a $95 billion emergency aid bill for both Ukraine and Israel. It passed with a bipartisan vote. The vote was 67-27 to move the package forward. It would dedicate $60.1 billion to help Kyiv in its war against Russia, and it would send $14.1 billion to Israel for its war against Hamas, in addition to almost $10 billion in humanitarian assistance for civilians, while addressing threats to the Indo-Pacific region. So in a rare Sunday session, 18 Republicans joined Democrats. That's what advanced the measure forward. Both Senator Mitch McConnell, Republican from Kentucky, the minority leader, said on the floor yesterday that we don't have the luxury of pretending that the world's most dangerous aggressors are someone else's problem. And then Senator Chuck Schumer, who's the Democrat from New York, who's the majority leader, said, we're keeping up our work on this bill, until the job is done. So it was given affirmation from both the lead Democrat and the lead Republican on the Senate. So that's a little bit of an update on what's happening today, Monday, February 12th.